That is the sound, ladies and gentlemen, of the end of the day. Welcome to episode, this would be 111, 111, of Wine for the People. We're going to be doing a little bit, something a little bit different tonight. So it is for those folks playing at home that are just chiming in. This is well and truly a pre-recorded show. So not like our usual live streams, although we are obviously debuting it at the normal live time. And that is because I currently, I think it's because this is actually taken the week before. But when you're watching this, I must be around about Flinders Ranges somewhere with absolutely zero reception. We're doing filming for a very, 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 very special project that's launching in a couple of weeks' time. And I just, A, I didn't have reception, B, I got to dedicate some time to filming because as you'll find out, the project that we've been working on is next level. It is one of the most next level things we've done in the last decade of just existing. But I didn't want to leave you guys out of lurch with a show. Of course, Mondays, Wednesdays, that's our thing. And we want to do something a little bit different. Of course, we've got an amazing guest for you this evening. But we wanted to do something, a bit of a sideways glance at terroir. We're going to look at terroir. We're going to look at the same sort of things that we love about wine, for example. The fact that it tastes of place, the fact that there's the commercial end of things right through to the artisan end of things, the fact that we can be old world, new world, the fact that we can blind taste these things. But we're going to be looking closer at whiskey. Whiskey with an E, not with an E, not with an E, maybe. And tonight we've actually got someone really special, not just special for in a general sense, special because she's related to me. This is Kerry Blandon. Hey, Kerry. Hi. And also known as Supersonic Turtle 02.
Yeah, sorry for the shit staring.
Yeah, Kerry is probably one of the most active supporters, viewers of the show. Not just this show, but in particular also the Lift Your Spirit show that Henry Hammersley from Applewood looks after. And of course, Kerry being here this evening. You're a whiskey fiend. Like this is. Way to put it. Yeah. It's actually it's awesome. Honestly, I was just blown away because I knew you when you were not a whiskey fiend. When you're not even like a booze. I mean, you're always a bit of a booze fiend.
You knew me when I was still underage.
Always a booze fiend. Yeah, but this happened. This was independent. Usually, at least in our family, I'm generally one of the instigators of being passionate about booze-related topics. This is all you. This came out of left field. Seriously, guys. And Kerry, of course, works with Team Unico, but is one of our go-to people whenever it comes to whiskey-related anything. Kerry's been at the heart of a fair few projects that are up and coming. But firstly, Kerry, if you've watched any of these shows recently, you know we do 10 quick questions. The rules are very simple. You cannot sit on the fence. You have to choose one or the other. I doubt this is going to be a problem for you. Of course, when I'm doing my research here, I'm a wine guy. So if I say anything really stupid about whiskey, just laugh at me. Everyone else will. First up, grain or barrel?
Grain for sense of place, barrel for flavour.
You're breaking rule number 1, Kerry. You can't.
It depends what you want in your whiskey. Personally, barrel.
Okay, cool. Barrel. Yeah. That's interesting. Neat or on the rocks?
Neat.
Oh, cool. So we'll talk about that too. Straight or mixed?
Straight.
Gnarly. Old-fashioned or Negroni?
Sorry.
Highland or Isla?
Highland.
Oh, really? Yeah, right. Yeah, cool. Yeah. And it was quick too. It's truthful when it's quick. Bourbon or Scotch?
Oh, this is another fence sitter for me.
Oh,
you can't.
No fence sitting.
Even if it's just a snapshot in time, like right now, what are you feeling? What are you vibing on right now?
Gun to your head, Kerry.
Yeah.
If I'm sipping, it's a Scotch. If I'm shotting, it's a bourbon.
We're gonna go.
I'll accept that.
Oh yeah, I'll accept that.
I think we can accept that.
Justification helps.
So it's if I'm sipping or if I'm drinking. It's like professionally drinking. Single malt or blend? Doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter, but single malt, just because when you're looking for quality, you tend to have more single malt releases that are of a higher quality. I'm getting bougie with my whiskey.
All right, American oak or Japanese oak?
American.
American classic.
In whiskey, yes. In wine, boo.
I'd like to see some Japanese wine matured in Japanese oak. Wouldn't that be cool?
I'm sure it's happened
It's probably happened already.
in Japan.
In Japan.
And we don't have it in Australia. And we've never tried it ever. And it's been made.
Always happened in Japan.
Yeah.
Damn, those small batch natty producers.
Fermentation, distillation, or maturation?
Maturation.
Oh, cool. You're very consistent. Very consistent. But this is the crowning one. Champagne or pet nat?
Oh. Classic champagne.
Oh, it's keeping... Wayne Aarons is alone in the pet nat club.
Yeah, he's on the Pet Nat, the island of Pet Nat. I reckon he's having a great time.
It's the same thing as the bourbon scotch. It's if I'm drinking to have fun,
Yeah.
then it's probably going to be a pet nat before moving on to other drinks. But if I'm drinking to celebrate something or to be a bit bougie, it'll be champagne.
Okay, but you can only choose. Okay, here's the dilemma splitter. You can only drink one at in the on one certain drinking session. You can only either drink champagne or you can only either drink pet nat.
Then it'd be champagne.
Oh wow. Okay.
Champagne all day.
I'd be doing pet nat with that actually. I'd like 1 or 2 glasses of champagne and then switch to pet nat.
Yeah. Just don't mix your drinks. No, there's gonna be a new adage that comes up. Was the beer then wine, you'll be fine. Wine then beer, you have something to fear
Beer
or
before
something.
liquor, never sicker.
Yeah. It's good to know. Cool. So
There
bonus
is science to back that up as well.
bonus question though, and this is usually just chucking a random bonus question. You're a celiac, right? So gluten, no go, right? So where does whiskey fit into that?
So because of gluten being a compound protein, it doesn't pass through distillation. There is a little bit of a risk with things like barrel-aged stouts. Stout barrel-aged.
Yeah, it's like yeah.
And potentially cross-contamination depending on what the barrel's being used for previously. But generally speaking, the ppm is so low in whiskey that it's
Negligible. Is it a common thing for whiskey distilleries to mature whiskey in a cask that has matured beer in it prior?
Generally as a small batch release. So Jameson's do one, partnered with a local brewery.
They do a couple. Stout, IPA. It's cool.
Really? IPA, have you tried it?
Yep.
What's it?
It's delicious.
Hoppy whiskey. Is it hoppy whiskey? Is that
No,
a thing?
it's an IPA cask.
So
IPA cask.
technically it wouldn't be a whiskey if the malt bill was hopped.
I am so out of my depth. You have no idea. You have no idea. Everyone's just like, yeah, IPA cask. And I'm like, I didn't know they used casks when they made IPA.
Depends. You don't have to.
Not how I just need to drink the stuff. See, this is fun. This is fantastic. Like I'm learning so much, and I'm only like 11 questions in. Is it?
Your beer knowledge is based off 4X, so it's
I don't even think they hop 4X.
Yeah. Do they have hops in 4X? Is it like your way to be able to get like a little bit of the old barley taste? Like, because I imagine barley's not really like a thing that you get to taste on a regular basis. Being
no,
celiac.
not at all.
So was that always a thing that sort of led you to just being like how did you discover whiskey? Like, you obviously tumbled down to Wonderland when it came to it. You did the Brendan thing, but you're obsessed.
Yeah, probably just exposure to it really. This is my Genesis whiskey. But yeah, I've worked with a couple of really cool people when I was in my bottle shop days. They sort of started beef drinking whiskey, just trying samples here and there in store tastings. And then I went to a couple of training events, and that's been, going down.
Yeah, right. And is it the, like, I mean, look, if you ask me the same question about wine, for example, what is it? It's the complexity of it, it's the taste of place, it's the, but also the wider industry as well, like the people you get to meet. Was that very similar for yourself? Is it more product driven, or is it also driven by?
Story driven.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's the craziest whiskey story you reckon you have heard of?
I really love the story behind Highland Park Distillery. So back when they were doing tax reform in Scotland, they'd sort of have your taxman coming up north, and they'd either hide the stills or clear out the town just so they wouldn't get have to pay their back taxes for years and years and years. Basically, every advancement in whiskey has been tax evasion as far as Scottish and Irish whiskies go.
I heard something about beer. Guinness was the same. Do you know stout came about because the Irish didn't want to pay tax, and it was taxed based on malted barley? See, I've got some drops and beer knowledge.
That's pretty sick.
They just roasted it. They were just like, roast it. So it's not malted, it's roasted. And it doesn't, they use the malted barley's enzymes to be able to convert the stuff over and roast the stuff. I think it's wicked cool.
That's Irish for it. That's the Irish people for it. I was like, you ain't taking my taxes.
Don't want to pay taxes. So how do spirits in general sit with celiac? Because I mean, you obviously talk about, say, whiskey specifically, but we commonly get contacted all the time, and it's awesome. I go, Laura, for those of you who don't know, so Kerry's sister is also celiac. So one of the main people behind setting this up, celiac, your mum's celiac. So it's often like a little stroke of credibility. It's like, I don't want to talk about it, Our people drink our booze. But like, is there spirits that people should be concerned about? Or is it just like, it's just got a bad rep?
It does have a little bit of a bad rep. I think because spirits are distilled, they're relatively safe. If you want to be super cautious about it, just go for something that doesn't actually use a gluten-inclusive product in its production. So if you do like a grape-based vodka or even gin as well, making sure any of the botanicals haven't been in contact with grains as well. Yeah, generally white liquors tend to be a little bit more gluten-free friendly. Rum is delicious.
Tequila.
Rum is delicious. So I've met plenty of wine nerds, of course. So we when they have a hashtag, Som Life. Whiskey nerds though are like what, from what I understanding, like next level. Like is it Comic Con? When I think of a whiskey nerd, I think of the people that go to Comic Con. Like the
wow.
And I that could be like a massive cop out.
Costume's optional.
Yeah. So I like what is like, how would you define a whiskey nerd? Because like they seem markedly more obsessive than wine nerds.
I'd say anyone that wants to learn more about whiskey is a whiskey nerd.
Cool.
I think that there are a lot of people that do take whiskey very seriously to the point where it can be off-putting, but that's not the case. It's bloody delicious stuff. Like, just go out there and try it and learn the stories behind it, learn how it's made, just get involved. It's delicious.
So you brought some whiskey as well. Like when I was like, hey, bring a couple of whiskey. I brought 7. It's just so
Vintage Kerry.
So what do we got? What do we got here? What's talk to me, Goose.
So this is my foray into whiskey. It was one of the first training events that I went to with whiskey. One of the first ones where I actually heard the story behind the brand and really got behind it. I also entered a cocktail competition with using this whiskey. So it was not only my first time trying whiskey, but seeing how it can be used and how you can manipulate the flavors in it. Delicious stuff.
It smells incredible. So like, it's for me every time if we drop to like the really different areas around Scotland.
Whiskey much.
I can definitely pick up on differences in flavor, but I don't know it intimately well. Am I correct in saying that there's like typically like house styles for whiskey? So like Glenfiddich has its own sort of like, is it actually possible in a lineup of whiskeys to go, that's Glenfiddich?
Absolutely, yeah.
Seriously?
Wow. Yeah. You'd have to have a very well trained palate. I could possibly do it if it was a very varied panel. Probably couldn't do it just off the bat with a whole bunch of other Highland whiskies, but it is delicious. Wow. For me, Highland whiskies have a little bit more fruit-driven flavour, so like a lot of pears, a little bit more green.
Pears. Wow. Pears, that's really accurate, isn't it? There's like pears galore, even on the palate as well. That's incredible. I've never grabbed it. I mean, I've never tasted Glenfiddich like this before.
I have, but I can't remember it.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. That's the thing. Like, you know, usually whiskey for me is like, you know, I'm watching Netflix in bed and I've got a glass of wine next to me and I don't. You finish it and you go to the bottle, it's empty. You're like, I don't want to open another bottle. It's like, you know, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And you're not going to do something irresponsible like that, like opening another bottle of wine. But you know what? Fuck it, we're going to get a tumbler of whiskey on the way. Because you know that it can sit open. That's one of the benefits, of course, of whiskey is, you know, it can sit completely open.
That's also one of the reasons that I did fall more so into whiskey than wine. If you spend $60 on a bottle, it's going to sit on your shelf for years if you're not like me. But if you spend $60 on a bottle of wine, you have to have it within 3 days.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you don't have to, but it tastes a lot worse if you don't.
Depends.
But is it a thing also for, like, I've seen bartenders collecting vintage bottles. Mm-hmm. They're like bottles from like the 60s. You know, is that does whiskey change in the bottle?
Not so much in the bottle unless it's being opened. But generally speaking, if you're looking at vintages, so barley as a crop has a lifespan of about 10 years. So the distillery can only make the same whiskey for approximately 10 years before they have to change their barley.
Seriously?
Yeah.
We didn't get into
depending
that.
on the strain of barley, depending on a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah.
That's gnarly.
We're not going to get too technical with it, but there is a question regarding barley and it being sort of like, obviously it's crop, isn't it? But back to whiskey nerds, there seems to be, I was like, there is just, I don't know, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm jaded, maybe I met a whiskey nerd once in a bar and it's just kind of like sticks out of my mind.
They seemed a little bit too wanky.
Well, I tend to draw like a line of distinction with like beer nerds, whiskey nerds, and for some reason, engineers, tinkerers, you know, that personality type. Yeah. Am I like going down the right path? Is that like?
Yes.
Oh, good. I'm not wrong. I thought I was going crazy.
The correlation in my mind comes down to stills.
So it's a fascination with perfection, engineering perfection.
I mean, everyone
makes
has
sense.
their own reason for loving whiskey.
Yeah, right.
Hopefully loving whiskey.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it seems to be like, and it's almost like with that sort of personality. Maybe that's the sort of trepidation I often have with whiskey nerds. It's sort of, well, firstly, they all know way more than me, which you know often doesn't happen, at least in booze.
Whenever I walk into a room full of whiskey nerds, I always assume I know nothing. You always pick up some new fun fact or some story you haven't heard or a really good tasting note, and it must be really
captivating.
Me every single episode of this show.
I mean, we both learned. We learned that Penfolds was the first natural winemaker in the hills last night. That was mind-boggling. So, do they play options? Do they play like blind tasting, like whiskies, like?
Not so much options, but there is a event once a year where there's just a massive 100 samplers of whiskey that you just go through and you have to try and pick what they are.
Like pin the tail on the donkey sort of dealio.
Yeah, there's no sort of set game-like options where you kind of pick and choose and narrow your way down. But there are definitely a lot of, like, not really even competitions, but tasting events and things.
Really, and sort of like, is it more like a sharing and a swapping of knowledge, you know, or is it just
it is a like quiz competition certification of some kind?
Do people just get boozed? Because obviously it's like this stuff's not like wine, right? I mean, you're not drinking it like wine either. But like, are they boozy affairs?
They would have to be by the end of it. I've never actually seen spittoons being used at a whiskey event.
That's
crazy. That's crazy.
Considering the alcohol percentage of them and the fact that you're trying like maybe a mouthful as well, it still adds up to a couple of standard drinks real quick.
Yeah, right.
Way quicker.
That is incredible. That's incredible. Like no spittoons ever. Well, we have pterodactyls.
I mean, they have them, but
they never get brought out.
Used.
Dude, is old, like you know, in the wine game, of course, is like old world, new world. Is that a thing when it comes to whiskey, or is it pretty agnostic?
It's more e or no-y. Yeah.
That's good.
But in my mind, if we were playing an options game, for me, Old World would be Scotland and Ireland. New World would be everywhere else. Which
Interesting.
I know
Canada?
is very weird based on the timing that distillation is established in certain countries.
So it's based on distillation, where it's not based on like. Could you just if there's a native grain, is that kind of another classification you could go for, something like that?
Could be. I mean, you've got native brews in Australia, but we've only started distilling whiskies to the same caliber. What, 93 was Mark?
99.
98, I think it was.
No, not 1990 is when the law changed, but I think they were distilling before that, and I think it was 92, 93 was the first sort of legal Australian whiskey under the new laws. But apparently, I did a bit of research. Apparently, we have been distilling legally in Australia for longer than Scotland. It's just in Scotland you need a license. But like licensed distillation happened in Australia in like, I'm pretty confident it was like late 1700s, early 1800s.
Yeah, when they came here, it was lots of rum.
It's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Because straight off the bat, straight off the boat, they're in, doing the whole colonization thing. Booze.
You've even got a couple of...
Caused a few problems.
Caused a few problems.
It caused a rebellion and the sacking of a few people.
Big all right, so should we move on to a next? You've got some blind. Are these blind?
These are blind.
Do I pour it out? I feel.
It's not blasphemous if you do.
Okay. This is what happens when people like say to me, "So do I pour it out?" I feel like those people now because I don't know anything about this. All right, so what do we got? What's here?
We're going to need some blind glassware.
We got blind glass.
Colour gives it away.
Oh, colour gives it away. Yeah, right.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah, right. So was it
give it away, but it certainly.
Oh, right. All right. Do you want me to close my eyes so I can't see it pouring?
Left or right?
Left. Let's go left. Let's.
Left to the camera?
No, you're left. You're left.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. And I want to know, what are the key differences between? Am I good to look? I'm good to look yet?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. What are the key differences between a craft whiskey producer and a commercial one?
So there's no real definition for craft. That's one problem that the distillation industry as a whole faces. But generally speaking, it is more that you're doing smaller batches, single barrel releases, the type of still that you're using as well. But you also look at the scale of it. There are distilleries with 12 stills that are still considered craft because they release such premium and delicious products.
Yeah, right. So it's a little bit like in the wine industry, if you're a little bit too big, they'll just regard you as being a sellout, and typically you will see, like, it's very rare to see a winery with a high level of production that also maintains a high level of quality across all of its products anyway. But in distillation, it seems things can be a little bit more controlled and a little bit more like dialed in.
It's actually interesting you put it that way because in Scotland you actually can't taste options still, whereas in Australia we can. So they use a lot more historic knowledge of the distillation process to actually cut their heads and tails.
Do you know this?
And doing a lot of blending and
Can't taste off the still in Scotland. Can't
What?
taste off the still. No. Is that a legal thing, or is that just something they choose not to offer?
No, it's illegal.
Oh,
there is
sounds
also
crazy.
certain distilleries that have a lot of people end up like digging tunnels outside the property because they get searched at the beginning and the end of every shift to make sure they haven't taken any product.
Whoa, people just see whiskey nerds, guys. They do crazy things to get their dram. Yeah. All right, what are we doing? Blind tasting. We're playing a bit of it. This is a blind tasting of a different kind. I mean, I don't even know what it is. I assume it's spiritus of sorts. It smells incredible. It smells incredible, and it reminds me of. So I've definitely not made it a secret that I've enjoyed my last ventures through the Americas, and this reminds me of something that I drink in America. This reminds me of bourbon. It's got like a sweetness and like a different grain to it.
Just a tip for everyone at home. Brendan's chucking his whole nose in the glass. Alcohol can burn your nostrils.
So what are you meant to do? How are you meant to sort of appreciate?
If you keep your mouth open,
Okay.
it doesn't burn quite as much. And the other interesting thing is because of the weight of the aromatic properties, if you smell it from the top of the glass versus the bottom of the glass, you actually pick up different scents.
No, sorry, we're just...
being horrible.
I think Noah really likes the smell of this. I think it was just about to snort the whole thing. It was impressive.
Wouldn't be the first time.
But the other thing is, like, I'm tasting spirits here for the last 7-8 years. You kind of just get used to it. Like most spirits, they don't actually. There's no physical pain for me anymore. When you drink, even like 90%, it's just warm. Like there's no pain anymore. I'm pretty sure my palate is shot. Pretty sure.
It's
pretty...
The only stuff now is like heads cuts with intense levels of juniper are viscerally painful.
Yeah.
And will ruin your day.
Yeah. You see me there and like a habanero in the other hand.
Don't even feel it, bro.
Yeah.
Don't even feel it.
Although I will say, bourbon and spicy pickles is an epic combination.
Is that the pickleback? Pickleback. So what is it? What is a pickleback?
Pickle brine, bourbon, shot, follow.
See, America just has the best stuff sometimes. They
figured it out.
There's a lot of stuff wrong, but they have some good things.
For all of you Adelaide-based people, head to Bread and Bone. Their house-made pickle brine is amazing.
Yeah, it's spicy.
Saturday. See you Saturday.
See you in the basement.
All right. Are we playing the game? Let's play the game.
Cool.
Blind tasting.
Cool.
Are we?
So your brain's thinking bourbon, going America.
I'm going America bourbon on this one.
So with what I was saying before, you would go New World, USA.
Yeah. Is USA considered New World in the world of whiskey? I would say it would be Old World. Surely.
Yeah.
1700s, 1600s.
I'd just say give options for countries.
I feel more stylistically, I personally consider it New World, even though I know historically it's probably Old World. All right, USA, Canada, or Australia, because in my mind.
Okay, yeah, fair call. Okay, because from what I've seen, there are people in Australia that do this sort of style and play around with this. I'm going America though.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going America. There is something. What I will say, I'm going to stick with America. That's what my gut is, but it doesn't have actually the depth and like the power that we often see out of American bourbon, and that's usually obviously because they use. I think in bourbon rules, am I correct that they have to use brand new trees? Got to cut down some brand new trees. Not they mature them for 3 or 4 years, I think, prior to. But it has to be brand new virgin oak is what they call it, virgin American oak. I actually don't think this is using virgin American oak, but I do think the mash bill is aligned with that. But which means it's probably Australia. But I'm gonna go with America. I'm gonna go with America.
You're right.
Oh yes! Oh god. Okay.
Yeah.
God.
So a bit of history behind that as well. Basically, to boost the American economy, bourbon has to be made from at least 51% corn, because corn is like just a crazy crop there. There was one way to claim land back when they were settling. So having an abundance of crop, they wanted a pathway to market for it. So that's why it's
really?
Corn-based. Yeah.
That I had no idea. It's also a little bit fucked up.
It's very American.
That's amazing. And the oak was
importing European oak.
Yeah.
American.
Because that's one thing from an Australian perspective. Like we're often kind of going like, why would you import it? It's like reality is when you're talking like American, you're talking on that side. You're talking on the East Coast. You were literally like not that far from Europe. It's just like one straight shot, guys. Just like go straight that way. You'll hit some land. It's probably America.
They thought it was India.
Yeah. If they start speaking weird languages and stuff, not America.
I mean. Initially, yeah.
So if we're talking bourbon as well, there's probably 2 main distillation areas, which is Kentucky, Tennessee, or is it something else?
I think it's something else because like, and look, my experience with Kentucky and Tennessee is very limited. All of my experience in this is very limited. So we're really talking about like JD, Jim Beam, you know, we're in that realm, and like some of the top end stuff out of those places as well. Like is it Basil something or other? Basil Hayden's and whatnot, which are all like the Founders series of Jim Beam. This is really delicate. It's actually for me quite a delicate spirit. So I think it's somewhere different that isn't maybe same mash bill but not bourbon. Maybe it's.
You are correct. It is from somewhere else.
It was like something I had in Chicago actually. A Koval distillery up in Chicago. It was like delicate like this. It was really cool.
Do you want to take a stab at some ABV or malt build or?
I think, okay, malt build, it's definitely not 100% barley. It is, I think it is, there is a fair proportion of rye in this. Rye for me brings this, and it's odd because from a winemaking perspective, this flavor would come from oak, but I think this comes from the actual grain itself. Coconut. Rye makes me think of coconut, and this is coconutty. It's got a small amount of I think it's like to find these styles that have no corn. I think this has some corn, so I think it's majority rye with a little bit of corn.
You'd be wrong. It's majority corn.
Oh, is there any rye in it? Do you know? Don't know.
I don't know.
We'll find out. We'll find out. We'll find out when I figure out what it is. In terms of ABV, I think the ABV is quite. I can't feel a lot of heat, so I think this is like a 40, 42.
43.
43. Yeah. Cool. All right.
And any stab at age?
I think it's pretty young. I would go maybe three years in cask. Yeah. Roundabouts. Yeah. Cool. So what can I have a look at the color now? Can I? Yeah, cool. So where is it? Where's it from? If it's not from Tennessee, it's not from.
This is gonna give it away for you. It's
okay.
From New York.
Shit, that doesn't really give it away. I don't know.
The funniest part, I know he has had this before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Let's got to get the old noggin going. It's from New York. There's a couple of really cool distilleries there. But I didn't think that they were doing. I know what it is. Is it Kings County? No, it's not. No. Oh man, there's Kings Counties in Brooklyn. There's Brooklyn Distilling, but I didn't think that Brooklyn do whiskey at all. There's green something or other. Green Hook Distillery, but that's gin based. Whiskies in New, and we're talking New York.
New York State.
New York State. All right. I've no clue. I don't remember. This is so cool. I mean, it's delicious. Don't get me wrong. What is it?
Is the Hudson Baby Bourbon.
Oh, of course it is. Yeah, and these are matured in really small casks usually.
Yep. They also pioneered sonic maturation, which is
sonic maturation?
Lining your barrel hole with a whole bunch of bass speakers.
And pumping bass into them.
Pumping music.
So it vibrates.
Absolutely. More interaction with the barrel and the whiskey. Well, at that point, not technically whiskey.
This is it Tuttletown Distillery? I think that's this Hudson is like the and Tuttletown Distillery. This is awesome. Aren't they owned by the same people as these guys?
They are distributed in Australia by the same people.
Distributed by the same. Yeah. These are delicious. Yeah. I'm gonna drink it.
Yeah, one of my absolute favourites.
Didn't guess it, Noah.
Not surprised.
Not surprised. Should we jump on to the next one? We're halfway through, Kez. We're halfway through. We got more whiskey. We're only 2 whiskeys deep on a 9 whiskey bender.
Happy Wednesday.
Wednesday. It's Wednesday.
This is some real movie. This is real some TV show magic.
Yeah. Once upon a time last week, Brenda got smashed on whiskey.
I'm just going to sit on this for a hot sec though.
Cool.
But you are welcome to start on this little one.
I've got my favourite natural disasters tea on today because that's what I am. All right, let's have a gander. Oh, this is different. This is different. It smells sweet. Oh wow. That aroma, how cool is that? It's like it's Vivo, isn't it? It's like
So the bottles for this are actually up on the bar.
On the bar.
Yes. There was a little cheat sheet in there for options. That's all good.
I missed it.
this isn't whiskey.
No, it's not.
This is well and truly not whiskey.
Glad you got that one.
So this is it a fortified? Is it a fortified?
Yes, it is.
It is. It's delicious. Yeah, I would fortifieds severely underrated. These sort of fortifieds, this is like an aperitif. This is like a Mestel. This is killer. This tastes like Lillet. This is fantastic. Okay, let's play. Let's play blind tasting rock and roll.
Alrighty, old world, new world.
I think this is old world.
It is new.
Cool. Cool. I'm into this.
Alrighty, South Africa, Australia, or USA?
All right, this is gonna throw me. Some of you may not know, most of you may not know that Kerry grew up in South Africa. There is an amazing wine that's very similar to this. That's in South Africa, in Constantia, as well.
Is it similar or is it?
Nah, surely not. Nah, this feels more like Barossa Clare vibes if it's New World. And Constantia's like hyper sweet. This is like quite dry. There's actually really, really nice dryness to this. I'm going to go Australia.
You would be correct.
Some dignity.
Alrighty, SA, Vic, or New South Wales?
I think it's. Is this? It tastes like Margans vermouth. Maybe it's.
Wow.
Maybe it's vermouth. Maybe it's Maiden Eye.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
Maybe it's Maybelline. I used to think that was like a really bad like disease. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline. Anyway, so I'm gonna go to SA.
You're not correct.
No, seriously,
No,
really?
no,
Yeah, right.
Victorian.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Sweet.
Beautiful.
Is it a single grape variety?
Maybe. We're not there yet.
Okay. So I like this.
King Valley, Yarra Valley, or Rutherglen?
Oh, surely Rutherglen.
Nah.
Wow.
This is from the Yarra Valley.
Hey, son. Looks like you don't know the rules of this game, but don't worry. I'm gonna show you.
The bonus to being a sister-in-law means that you can play the player as well.
Yeah, I'm getting so played right now. You're doing great.
Bring something you know he's had.
Yeah.
He doesn't get it.
Yeah.
Bring something that's a total curveball.
Yeah, this is this curve. So we're going Yarra. Okay, because to be honest, my next stage was going to be King, but definitely not Yarra. I was definitely never going to choose Yarra for this. Okay.
Cool. Do you want to try picking a grape variety?
No. No,
What
not
would
at
this
this
be
stage.
from Yarra? Someone fortified Pinot, I'd be like, who has the world's most enormous balls? Because that's crazy.
You have big balls. I like the big balls. I actually think I'm now sort of like sitting in the mindset of Maiden Eye right now, and I'm like Syrah.
It is actually not grape based.
Really?
What are you talking about?
Really?
No. It's not grape.
No. It's like another fruit, isn't it?
Another fruit.
Sweet berry one.
Pretty much.
Wow. Wow.
This is
okay. Cool.
freaking gnarly.
This is like just got my head spinning. Apricots. Is it apricots? Peaches?
Nope.
Fuck's sake, Kerry. What is
Cherries?
It's blackberries.
No, no, it's not.
Fine.
Not a chance. Not a chance. The fuck? No way.
Oh, is this? I know what this is. I feel like I know what this is.
This is the color, people. That's the color. Okay. I mean, it smells and tastes awesome.
Yeah.
Like without a shadow of a doubt, I would happily like play around with this. I have no idea what it is. Like seriously, no clue. Who makes this? Who makes this? What is the producer?
That's a good question. I picked it up probably like 5 years ago at the like tourist information center.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is just a random.
So this is just
The purpose of this was to throw me.
yeah.
That's literally it.
I love it. You achieved the goal. I thought this was like marionette, like
a marionette piece or
cassis.
something.
Yeah.
If he went Vic, I could possibly convince him of that.
Yeah. I thought it was that good.
Done, Kerry. Like that is like mystery.
Yeah. yeah.
Twice now. Actually.
You broke options.
You broke options.
Yeah, we've had a few people try to do it. You broke it the hardest.
So let's talk Japan. So you spent some time obviously growing up in Japan as well. Have you found an affinity for Japanese malts?
Not particularly. I like variety, so I've got a couple Japanese go-tos, but generally speaking, I go for more Highland Scottish whiskies if I'm...
This is more like expression, because my understanding of Japanese whiskies, it's more about like restraint.
Yeah.
Being tailored.
It's actually quite interesting that I said I tend to stick with Highland and Scottish whiskies and not Japanese, because a lot of Japanese distilleries actually learn from Scottish distilleries about the
Like
techniques
techniques and how they do what they do. What do you reckon though? Because like Japanese whiskey is constantly now on the minds of so many like different people all the time. What do you reckon made them so revered in the global industry so quickly?
Quality and scarcity.
You reckon it's literally just those two things? It's just like a really good quality.
So around about 2014, you saw a rise of like Distillers Reserves coming out. Essentially, Japanese whiskey just took off at such an exceptional rate that they didn't have enough aged stock to support that market space. So they had to release unaged, non-aged statement products to actually meet the demand.
Yeah, right.
Which sucks because now
no one else can get
been used up and you can't get it aged long enough to...
And now all the whiskey nerds hate you because they can't get a hold of it.
And it also became very expensive.
So what do you reckon though that Japanese whiskey producers are doing that Australian whiskey producers aren't?
I don't think it's anything that Australian producers aren't doing. I just think it's global perception as well. They probably enter a lot more awards programs and things like that.
Yeah, okay, so it is like global recognition, because it seems like Australia's been doing whiskey now for a little while. Like, and we do have some cracking whiskeys. Well, let's move on with more whiskey. let's have a look. What else have we got?
So I'll also say on that note, I don't think that Australia's doing anything wrong, but I think Japanese whiskey sits in quite a concise category. I think with Australian whiskey, we're yet to find that. There's so many amazing products coming out of Australia, but we don't approach it in the same way for every distillery. We don't, like, there's so many experimental batches. Starwood does their ginger beer cask. Delicious stuff, but doesn't taste the same as the rest of their range.
Ginger beer cask? Yeah.
They do an annual release.
It's an interesting thing. I on one hand, I kind of want to go, why would they do that? And then on the other hand, I'm sort of like, hey man, I'm actually absolutely stoked that Australians are trying to walk their own path. We have this same sort of thing in the wine game where, we're constantly trying to, and I get frustrated at winemakers that especially when they're trying to mimic like French and Italian styles inside Australia, which I just think is inherently folly. Just move to France and Italy and become a winemaker already. And quite often, I feel like Australian whiskey producers put, say, Scotland on a pedestal, and probably rightly so, but for right or wrong, judge themselves based according to that yardstick. not sort of understanding what we could potentially do, like just in Australia alone. Did you bring any Australian? Do you have anything Aussie?
I do.
How can we compare and contrast?
I went all baller with my Aussie one.
What is this?
This is Overeem.
Talk to me, Goose.
One of the first Australian female distillers.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Awesome. Absolutely awesome.
And just absolutely delicious. So they've been distilling for a few
Oh,
now.
oh, can you hear that? Could you hear that, guys? This is the thing. It's like
Sorry,
there's
guys. I'll do
two
that again for you.
popping of a cork and this. Oh, that is too good. That is too good. That is like the sound you want to hear. That sound always precedes a smile. There is just no way that you could be like, yeah, no, not into that. Not into that at all. So talk to us about Overeem. So this, I'm assuming, I'm purely assumption here, Tassie?
Yes.
Yeah. Why Tassie? What do you reckon's become like Tasmania's? I can smell that from here.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Beautiful. Climate, definitely one thing. And that's also something that Japan has a bit more consistency with when you're comparing and contrasting. Basically, because their aging process is nice and slow, means there's a lot more consistency with your end product. Whereas in Australia, you can go from it being a little bit slow to having, massive hot days, massive cool nights, and the fluctuation in barrel is just so extreme that it can make the aging process taste quite rough.
Yeah. Okay. So it's interesting because I think there's a couple of variables of maturation. Obviously, with what say Hudson was doing with like make the cask smaller and then obviously vibrate the shit out of it with sonic booms, and then you've got obviously inherent temperature. In Australia, they talk about this in the wine game, and it's actually one of the reasons why places like Clare Valley are awesome because of this diurnal temperature shift. Where basically, think of like a desert with elevation, what is often called a continental climate. And that means you have really, really warm days because basically you're a desert, but you're just closer to the sun. But you have very, very cold nights because of the change of pressure. And that means this temperature shift is causing all forms of like it's suddenly liquid expands and then contracts and expands and it contracts, apart from like a seasonal movement, which seems to be a lot more gentle. Like oxygen, obviously, when it hits a bottle and it's I guess glass must be like an inert vessel. It mustn't change so much, but it's more like the oxygen and the yolk marrying together at the same time.
Yes.
So what makes this the baller one? What's baller about it?
Tasty. Just try it. So I also, you were asking before about barrel versus mash. This actually marries them really well. So it is a sherry cask, and you do get that lovely sort of fortified those lovely fruit characters coming through, but it's still got that really lovely sweet malt character as well.
This is so tasty. Oh wow! And it's got this charred, smoky back end to it. Is this peated, or is this cask?
This is not peated. This is all cask.
Wow. So when we talk about peated, I'm going to slam this little button here. Get basic. What's peated? Lagavulin. I've seen this around. My grandfather used to smash this. He was Scottish. So basically that means he's like 80% whiskey. So I want to know, they'll dig him up in like 50 years and be like, oh my God, an entirely preserved human being. It's like, how did this happen? It's like all the Scots are just, anyway, like what is peat? Like,
so as appetizing as this sounds, peat is decomposing vegetal mass.
Cool and normal.
Yeah.
What?
You have peat bogs in Scotland, and they're just like this kind of vegetal mass of, like, it kind of would be the same as like having seaweed on the coast. That really gross.
But they're actually like quite condensed from what I've seen. They're like bricks. You can cut them out and move them and stuff.
So you pull them out, dehydrate it, and then it goes into your smoking when you're roasting your mash.
Oh, right. Oh, when you're like drying the mash out after. Yeah, right. And they couldn't just use heat? They couldn't just... suppose, but back in the day, I suppose they probably...
Flavor.
Yeah, well, I suppose back in the day they couldn't. They didn't have the opportunity to...
Yeah, it's what's around, what's available.
Yeah.
You know, use what you can, and it does create a very distinct stylistic difference for a lot of Islay and anyone else who decides to use.
We need glasses.
Product.
I'll use this one. Do we have to use? Oh man, I feel like guilty.
You can use whatever.
Use whatever. Yeah, let's use this. Yeah, cool. All right, so this is an unpeated and this is peated.
The reason that I love lager as a peated.
You just call it lager.
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's like a.
I have no time for pretentious names and mispronunciations.
Lagavulin.
Sorry, it's.
This is
I just.
That's an incredible smell.
Drink than get told off for saying it wrong.
So on our 10 quick questions, you were
Yes.
like not for peated. It was unpeated.
Preference towards unpeated, because if I have a peated whiskey, I really love balance. Balance is key to me. So lager's really lovely and beautiful and balanced. You get that nice smokiness from the peat. You get a really beautiful malt build as well, and a really nice cask influence as well.
This smells honestly like the nicest packet of cigarettes I've ever smelled.
Yeah.
there's like a
it has that
tobacco-y
lovely
smokiness.
Yeah.
It's when you said seaweed, I've encountered peated whiskies plenty of times before, but when you said seaweed, you know, that's like something that's now stuck with me because it's almost like tobacco smoke and very specific, like cigar box, you know, really nice tobacco smoke, not the chemically stuff. And this salty iodine like seaweed
My
is
point of
briny.
reference for brine and salt is seaweed. I had a growing up experience in Japan.
Yeah, so
that's sort of my point of reference.
like nori, wakame, that kind of deal. Yeah. This is that's incredible. So this
and
is
a lot of distilleries that use this are in coastal regions. The other thing is if your cask is exposed to sea breezes, you can get more salinity through that as well.
So is this is a flavor that is culturally based, I assume, because it's just historically been that way and that's just how it's always been. And it's, from my understanding, only comes from like one place in Scotland, or it can kind of come from...
Heather peat, yes. You can get a whole bit different type of peat as well, just depending on what the plant matter that's breaking down came from.
Right, so not all peat is the same.
Not all peat's the same.
And not how they use it as well is quite distinct and quite different.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Like this it adds an entirely different element to the entire whiskey.
Making a beer, you can do like fresh hops, dry hops, you can torpedo them. Depending on how you get the flavours into whiskey. In Scotland, you are a little bit more restricted due to legislation to do so. Same with bourbon and Irish whiskies, just to get the name.
So you can't just like we do with gin. You can't just chuck a bunch of peat in the still.
No, not really.
No, that would be like a big no. Yeah,
well,
right. Okay. You could. I mean, probably tastes like shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You've distilled certain fruits and vegetables that haven't come out the way you want either.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, distilled peat, maybe not. Are whiskey nerds as passionate about whiskey cocktails as they are about the liquid itself?
There is generally a distinct line.
Yeah.
So you were asking before about neat or rocks. That, like, for me, there's no wrong way to drink whiskey.
Just drink it.
Just do it.
Love it.
But there are a lot of purists out there who just don't have time for cocktails. The other sad thing is that a lot of cocktails that are more widely available are really laden with sugar or bitters or not made well. If you do go to a whiskey bar, by all means order a whiskey cocktail. They will make it to perfection. It'll be delicious. It'll change your life. But if you're going to a pub on a Friday night having a steak and there's a top shelf whiskey available, just have it neat.
It's actually really good advice. That's actually remarkable advice.
Drink for your venue.
Yeah. So how creative can someone be when crafting whiskey itself?
In Australia?
Like, is there like how many? Have you seen any? Obviously, you mentioned ginger beer cask beforehand. You know what weird shit has happened in Australia today?
In Australia?
Or even just like globally, like if there's a lot of like creative differences.
I think there's definitely a lot of creative differences, and that whole sort of purist factor looking into something. I feel like it's kind of a little bit like natty wine compared to conventional winemaking.
Yeah, okay, like Curio. Like one's more a Curio and the other one's a main event kind of deal. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
A lot of experimental stuff can't necessarily be done on scale, which is why it can be so rare to get a hold of. And the other thing is, you look at things like the size of your barrel you're using. There's such batch variation from barrel to barrel that if you can't release a consistent product, then you're like, you have to fall into the category of craft.
Totally.
Yeah. Don't know if that actually answered your question though.
Well, it is interesting to see like the delineation between, you know, because I think with wine there is like complete creative freedom, and people take a lot of liberties with that. And we're seeing some wacko stuff now. We're seeing people like add in different fruits. I tasted a Pinot Noir Maraschino. I think it was like, so it was a cherry and Pinot blend made in Mornington. But it seems like whiskey's a lot more like down the line of like, this is what a whiskey is.
The other thing in certain countries for certain naming legalities, you have to actually state your age statement. It has to be the first cask it goes into, which is why a lot of times you'll see on a whiskey label that it's finished in a different barrel. So a lot of whiskeys are aged in bourbon cask because, as we were saying before, you have to use new American oak.
Which means that there's seasoned casks.
Abundance of seasoned bourbon casks.
So every time someone wants to make like a new batch of bourbon, there's like another whole bunch of like casks like have to get prepared for that specifically, and then basically Scotland gets to buy a whole bunch after, or it comes out to Australia or something like that.
Scotland,
what about like
Japan? Anyway.
We obviously have a very well-established wine industry. Like, do we have? Is red wine casks? Is that a thing?
It's become a lot more popular. There are very few that are aged from beginning to end in red wine casks, but Starward does an amazing one. So they actually, their first release got all of their red wine barrels, which aged the Yalumba Octavius. So really distinctive flavour. Unfortunately, due to their upscaling, they can't do that anymore, but they do get some beautiful casks to use, and it still has that really distinct red wine flavour to it. It does also impart more of a colour than your bourbon barrels do.
I was obviously being like a wine-centric individual, I was surprised to find there's a couple of whiskies that I tried that I really did, but I enjoyed them, probably not because they were really great whiskies, and I'm sure they were, but because of the story, as you were saying about the wine. There's two. There's Ben Romark, which we tried together, that I was just like obsessive over. And it's actually kind of cool because it was one time that I could actually showcase to Kerri something that she hadn't seen before. She was like, yeah, Ben Romark Distillery, I know that, but they have something called a Sassicaia wood finish. So Sassicaia is what's called a Super Tuscan. It's one of a handful of wines out of Tuscany. This particular one owned by the Antinori family. And they just have like a dealing with a distillery in Scotland that they send their casks to, their sort of wine barrels to once they've been emptied, and they have this sort of special release. The other one was actually Glenmorangies Neck Door. It's really good, and I'm pretty confident it's Sauterne cask, and I'm pretty confident they did like an addition where it was Chateau d'Yquem casks, which is like the most. It's a first growth Bordeaux, like, you know, thousands of euro a bottle, you know, wine, and to have whiskey matured in. I love the idea of Sauterne because it's a very sweet wine, and it's a botrytized wine, and you could taste all of it. You could taste all of it for days inside the whiskey. It was actually really fun. I'm not too sure whether, you know, it could end up becoming like a whiskey person's curio, because sort of like when we see like, you know, gins that take liberties with their flavorings, where you would start to go, is that actually gin, or is it just like a gin-based liqueur, for example?
You'll certainly have the purists that'll be like, no, this is my go-to, this is what I view as whiskey. But that's the other thing, that laws are always changing. They're actually even looking at changing the bourbon laws so that they don't have to use new American oak.
So they don't keep cutting down trees. Absolutely. It is a bit of a thing with like bourbon.
It's
like
going to be really interesting to see the flow-on effect of that as well, because if 90% of other distilleries in the world are using bourbon casks to age their product, what's going to happen when all of these American distilleries are reusing their barrels and all of a sudden the supply's gone down? Well, what will they turn to?
It's actually like outside of obviously bourbon casks, and that's just like something that is just so It's so awesome, right? You know, the how it actually operates. New casks go to bourbon, and you know, the bourbon producers send them across to Scotland, and I do wonder whether or not Scotland had like, maybe there was like nefarious dealings to ensure that like this American oak was coming across to them on the cheap. But obviously that must, before the whole sort of, I assume Scotch predates bourbon culture for like quite a fair few years. What were they using beforehand, like in Scotland?
So Scotland didn't actually used to produce as much whiskey as they do now. It used to be Irish whiskey. So when phylloxera hit in France,
yeah,
there was a massive decline in available brandies, in available cognacs.
Really?
So
of course
all
there
of a
was,
sudden, all these people that were drinking that turned to Irish whiskey.
No way. That was like 1830s, 1820s. Yeah.
So they absolutely boomed with that. And then Prohibition hit in the States, and of course, Irish whiskey could no longer be imported.
Yeah.
They abided by that. The Scots didn't.
Oh.
So that's where the rise of Scottish whiskey over Irish whiskey came into effect.
Really? So what the Scottish were just like, you know what, we're going to get them. We're going to get the Americans some whiskey no matter what way we could get them. That is incredible. I had no idea. It's actually really cool because I guess I assume that, you know, in America at that time, there was obviously a lot of Irish immigrants. So, you know, they're very a parochial lot, but I'm pretty confident if they just stopped getting whiskey, they'd definitely jump ship to something else. Because we're like at time, man. And I want to ask you one last single question, but I'm trying to decide which one.
So many whiskeys.
I know we haven't done a blind tasting, mate, but we're at time. Talking about wine, we talk about the influence of climate, soil, variety, the human element, and this is, you know, when we talk about terroir.
Yeah.
And it's the last question I want to ask you. Are there any particular unique aspects of whiskey terroir? What is, when someone is like, you know what, I want a whiskey that tastes a place, what's the best piece of advice you could give someone to say, like, look for these things first?
Look for a single cask that's a single malt. I would highly recommend going to Bruichladdich and Octomore. They have their own barley sources as well, and they do have organic releases. So
they actually have, I jumped on their website, funnily that you mentioned that, and they have this whole thing on terroir. They have like a big focus on terroir.
Absolutely.
And they're one of the few.
They are also B Corp certified.
Oh really? Oh, they're a B
That's
Corp.
fucking awesome.
We love B Corps, and we love Bruichladdich. And on
They get a Bruichladdich, like, you know, kind of
Call
contra
out.
deal.
So let's do a Unico-Laddick. Anyway, and on that note, I've had too much whiskey. I've had half a beer, and it's time to sign off. Kez, mate, thanks so much.
Thanks for having
Seriously,
me.
like, again, I'm flabbergasted at the amount of whiskey knowledge that you have in your head. I can't even fathom. I'm basically whacked right now. Like after just a few sips, like this is next level stuff. But firstly, it's awesome to see the variation across the different styles. And this is, correct me if I'm wrong, we didn't actually try anything that was American except for the blind tasting, right? So like this stuff, that's just barley. You know, it's the variation amongst barley is utterly incredible. Whiskey is, of course, one of those things that I think that really sits in the place that, you know, when wine just can't cut the mustard. You know, wine don't cut the mustard. We got to go with whiskey. Noah, thanks for hanging around and enjoying the banter and the tasty whiskey with us.
I had one whiskey.
yeah. And of course, everyone at home, thank you so much for chiming in. So sorry this couldn't be a true live show. Hopefully, Missy, who's actually been on the comments, has kept you utterly entertained and informed. And we will be back on Monday with a legitimate live show, I promise. And in a couple of weeks, we'll be showing you what we're working on all this week, but we have to remain tight-lipped about it. Until then, hopefully you've got whiskey in your glasses or wine. I don't really care. Just something, and you're cheesing with someone either in person or digitally, keeping everyone tied together as a wonderful community. Until such time, catch you later.